Hello, everyone. Good day. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the call today on today's webinar. My name is Kehinde Ojo, and I am a customer excellence strategist here at Reliance Infosystems. I'll be your host today, guiding you through today's session, which has been themed Ensuring Security and Compliance in a Hybrid Work Environment. And I'll be ensuring that you also have a great and a seamless experience today. So as we move on, before we commence today's discussion and today's agenda, I'd like for you to take note of the following. Please take note that this session is being recorded, and you'll be getting the recording in your emails a few days after the event. All attendees are muted and your videos are turned off. This is just so that we ensure a focused and distraction-free learning environment for everyone. But not to worry, should you have any questions or should you encounter any issues, kindly utilize the chat function. We have our experts who are on ground to address all of your questions and to answer any inquiries you might have during the session and during the Q&A at the conclusion of the event. Now, moving on, to set the stage for today's discussion, we will be exploring some of the challenges that come with hybrid work, how they impact security, how they impact your productivity, and really your overall business operations. A closer look at some of the cybersecurity risks that exist in the hybrid work space. And from there, we'll be introducing the ZTNA, which is the Zero Trust Network Access, a new model that has been designed to address some of these risks that, or some of these challenges that we will be discussing. Then we'll move into discussing how to really implement this security and this compliance and best practices, ensuring that your organization is compliant and it is meeting those industry and regulatory standards. And finally, we will be opening the floor for you to ask your questions where you can, gain deeper insights from our experts. Now, talking about our experts, I'm pleased to introduce to you our experts today. They bring a wealth of experience when it comes to and expertise when it comes to the cybersecurity space. We have Victor, who is the Senior Vice President of the Data Center and Endpoint Transformation Unit here at Reliance Infosystems. We also have Semyu. He is the Vice President of the Network Security Unit, and Zibo is a cybersecurity engineer. So what they'll be doing together today is that they'll be helping us break down those topics that I have previously outlined, discuss them extensively, and provide some of those actionable strategies that you can implement in your organization to strengthen your security and to stay compliant in your hybrid work environment. Now, with today's agenda set, I will benefit you beginning from this session. So by being a participant, you stand a chance to receive a data protection compliance readiness checklist. You gain insights on privacy and data governance policy development, and you have access to free cybersecurity awareness training. Plus, we'll be offering you a complimentary advisory session so that you can, have those, we can dive deeper and dig deeper into your organization's specific needs. Now, please note that terms and conditions apply, and we will be giving you more details on all of these offers at the end of the session. So please do not be in a hurry to leave. Now, moving on, now that we have set the stage for why we are here today, let me just give you a brief introduction into the entirety of today's session. So we all know that the shift to hybrid work has really transformed how we operate. We now have teams working from multiple locations. We now have them accessing resources from various devices. We even now have businesses heavily relying on those cloud-based applications because, the new thing now is moving to the cloud. But with all of this flexibility, right, comes those increased security risks and those traditional security models that you once relied on or that your organization was once used to, they're now proving very insufficient. And when we're talking about these traditional security models, what exactly are we referring to? We're referring to those methods that, assume that everything inside your corporate network is secure or is trustworthy. Now, I want you to think about firewalls. I want you to think about VPNs. And those network access controls that were just designed for the on-premise environments. Now, the problem with all of this is that we are now in a world where users, where devices, and where applications now exist beyond just the traditional corporate perimeter, right? And this makes all of those traditional models that you once knew ineffective and insufficient against those modern cyber threats. And now this exactly is where the zero trust comes in. Now, unlike those traditional security models, what zero trust does is that it assumes that no one, either inside or outside your network, should be trusted by default. Now, it also says that every access request is thoroughly verified, is continuously monitored, and is just granted based on those strict policies. Now, today, what we'll be doing is that we'll be exploring how exactly this zero trust can help your organizations to navigate some of these challenges, protect your data, because I know that is of priority to organizations. Security is a priority to any organization. And also how you can really build a more resilient security posture. And to kick things off, I'm glad to introduce our first speaker today, Victor. He'll be the one to lay the ground for what we have for the Power Pack session we have for you today. But I want you to remember that you are free to ask your questions in the chat room. We have our experts on standby. Now, Victor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Candy. Thank you so much, all the participants, for joining us on this webinar today. As we are trying to actually introduce to you hybrid work, security, and compliance. I believe today every organizations have matured in a way, or in one way or the other, has found themselves having to actually consider or leverage an hybrid work model in the environment. And by the way, hybrid model we talk about here is actually a blend of a remote work and also on-site work. And in a rapidly evolving digital world of today, where organizations are embracing hybrid work models, a flexible blend of remote and in-office operations, while the shift is actually bringing increased productivity and agility, you will believe with me that it also comes with a lot of challenges. It is understandable a lot of benefits that comes with hybrid work, or we can say remote work in some cases or for some organizations. But all of this also come with a lot of security challenges. And can I ask, about report actually shows that 74% of organizations today experience a security breach due to vulnerability introduced by hybrid work. Because now that the staff are now working remotely, gone are those days where we used to have everybody, working physically in the office, where in most cases every corporate infrastructures are not even accessible outside the workplace. But that is no longer the place, because if there are any organizations today that still rely on this, we're definitely going to be underutilizing the staff and also reducing the productivities of the staff. Having said that, there is need for businesses and organizations to actually be intentional in putting the right structure, in having the right tools in place that can actually ensure that the sustainability of their business and organizations and services and products that they provide to their customers can actually continue. Another report also shows that about 60% of remote employees admit to the fact that they use personal devices and in most cases personal network, which you as the IT team or as the leaders of the organizations don't have control. All of these are various challenges that remote work or hybrid work has actually brought into the architecture. And that is why we're going to be seeing this. Looking at this, starting from the increased attack surface, like I mentioned earlier, Now, in those days when users are working from office, even when users suspect any suspiciousness in probably the email they receive or system malfunctioning or misbehaving or behaving in a particular way that is not that looks suspicious. So what they do basically is to beckon on the IT team, probably to call them or to even take the system to the IT team so that they can actually use their expertise to be able to decipher what exactly is going on and the next actions to take. But you realize that today, with hybrid work or remote work, all of those decisions has actually been left in the hand of the employee that in most cases they're not actually aware because that is not actually his own area of expertise. They don't have what it really takes to be able to differentiate between what is actually right and wrong, when it comes to cybersecurity, as it were. And looking at it again, you realize that back in the days, we used to have everybody working physically in the office where every devices, every user's traffic passes through the perimeter and every traffic coming into the organization also pass through the same perimeter. In that case, organizations invest a whole lot in securing the perimeter. But today, the perimeter has now left the organization data center. It has now been, left to the individual or on the desk of each employee that is actually working from home. And imagine all of this has also increased the attack surface of each of those organizations. And that is why there is need for intentionality. Number two is also on secure home networks. I mentioned earlier today that users are actually working from home. In most cases, we also have a report that shows that more than 30% of employees of an organization that works or that adopt hybrid, find themselves, to access corporate infrastructure or resources on the go, probably in the coffee, in the shop, in the market or wherever they may be, and they have reason urgent need to actually attend to one thing or the other. And in most cases, where internet will also be an issue, they can actually end up, trying to leverage any other available internet available around them. And all of this, we realize that it's actually increasing the attack surface because at the end of the day, before you know, criminals actually have different compromised free network here and there, that a lot of this employee does not necessarily have adequate information on or sensitization on the fact that they are not meant to use them. And using them within few minutes, that can actually lead to the entire organization or business actually being exposed to threats and even breached by the attackers or the criminals. Moving on again, we have the phishing and social engineering attack. In those days where users or in a work model where everybody work from home, you realize that users are not as liable to such threats today as they were before, because right now they work from home. A whole lot of communications, they are actually exposed to a lot of individuals that may not necessarily have the right mind of such persons or even the organization. And before we know, a whole lot of things can actually spill out of such people, such individuals to the hand of hacker or intruder that can actually use that to perpetrate evil in the organization. So we also have the endpoint security gaps, the gap between personal and corporate devices, used by the employee interchangeably, is actually a whole lot of security challenge. Imagine a particular information access maybe from a corporate device, and maybe the device actually go down, or for one reason or the other, or for any reason, the device becomes unavailable. The employee will end up using available device, which may actually be his personal device that may not necessarily have any security control or any security mechanism. And what that means is that easily the hackers or the criminals out there can actually gain access to that system, through that system, into the corporate infrastructure of the organization. And before you know, such company can actually become liable or become victim of such different kind of attack that we have out there. And we also have the data protection challenges. Imagine the sensitive data, today that is being accessed and shared from multiple locations. Users actually work from different locations. On the go, they work and they have access to corporate devices or corporate informations. And when sharing all of this or access all of this, they can actually increase the security posture or the attack surface of such organization. Then compliance and violation violation. You realize that lack of visibility over remote work, and that is why every businesses and organizations need to be intentional about their security architecture, where your users are working remotely today, or they have an hybrid model, and yet you don't have mechanism in place to actually ensure that you can actually have visibilities to how your data is being accessed, who is accessing it, by who, and then it becomes a serious challenge. And that is why a full question will actually be sent on your screen now, that actually shows the biggest cybersecurity that your organization has faced. Kindly answer that question with every honesty. All right, moving on. We have the best practices. So that is to say, I haven't highlighted all of these issues and concerns. What are the best practices? How can organizations actually ensure that they are able to overcome all of these challenges? And one of the things there is called zero trust. Zero trust model is actually an architecture that verifies every users, every devices, every applications before granting access to such users or identity, so to say. Imagine in an organization where even the MD, back in the days, I remember some MD of an organization would rather ask the IT team that I don't want password for my account, so just leave it empty, so that anytime I just click on my name, then I'm taken to my system directly. So, but you realize that with the security architectures of today, that has become absolutely unacceptable, because even the top managers in an organization are the most targeted individuals, because they are the ones that they know that have access to what is actually very valuable of the organization. MFA is also another mechanism or system that every organization needs to actually put in place when you consider a remote work or an hybrid work model. And I also need to let you know that a lot of organizations today or individuals, they believe that once I have MFA, then I'm absolutely secure. But can I tell you, it is absolutely wrong. MFA is not also absolute, but it's just one of those mechanisms that can help you stay ahead of the curve, because MFA can still be bypassed. MFA can be generated, leveraging third-party tools that can actually hack into any person's systems. Then moving on is the secure access and VPNs. Gone are those days where we'll have the IT team, because they have reasons to actually access a particular information or a particular server at home or remotely, probably they are in another location of the organization. And what they do is they publish those servers on RDP, so that they can actually log in anytime and access it. The likes of Petya, a variant of ransomware that came forward in the year 2017, and since then it has been rampaging a whole lot of organizations actually leverage this kind of model, RDP. And that is why we have a report that shows that the 45% of attack that happens, leverages RDP. And that is why for no reason should any organizations today have RDP published on default port. Absolutely not acceptable. Then moving on, we'll have the cloud security and data encryption. So there is need for businesses and organizations to be intentional, that if indeed I have to allow hybrid work in my organization, then I need to know how my data can have absolute and adequate protection. Encryption in transit and also emotion. It is actually absolutely important. And that is why when you see regulation around GDPR, that is one of the components of such, policy, as it were. Moving on again, talking about the device applications management. So there is need for you or for every organization to have a way or a model that can actually enforce MDM and even application on the enterprise level, whereby you are sure of every of the applications that you are going to be allowing your employee to have access to, that they are adequately protected and they are at every time they are adequately assessed before they are given privilege to actually have access to such applications, and they are protected. And again, you realize that we have a motion in Reliance that we actually champion that says security beyond technology, and that is actually talking about the human war. That is the human, which is actually the users, which is actually the weakest link in the attack chain. You realize that in most cases, our companies may actually make a lot of investment, in securing the perimeter, in securing the endpoints, in putting so many things in place. But where you do all of that and your employee does not have adequate information on how to secure and protect themselves, all of those investments can actually be a waste, because this user is inside. And by the time they lose guard and they expose or drop sensitive information in the hands of the group, every of those protections can easily be bypassed. So that is why it is important. You must also have mechanism in place, a program in place where your users are being trained on regular basis on hygiene, on how to manage their password, how to use their system, and so many other things around cybersecurity related. And last one there is actually talking about the incident response plan. There is no security that is actually 100%. There is need for you to actually be aware of this, and that is why every standard, every organization today are encouraged to have these very incident response plans in place, because from research has shown that organizations that doesn't have this plan, some of us, we are always living in denial, thinking, no, my organization cannot, go for bid, my organization cannot be hacked, or my organization cannot have incident. But when it happens, it takes these kind of organizations a whole lot of time before they are able to even know what to do. For organizations that they have the plan in place that, okay, let's even imagine the worst. So when this happens, what is our various steps that we need to actually take? Who should we actually consult first? When the IT team is aware of this incident, what should they do? So where they have all of those plans in place, and also have a way to get their data and their services back from a BCDR strategy standpoint, such organizations is able to actually stand the test of time, that no matter what happens, they're able to actually find their way back to operation. Moving on, we also talk about data protection laws and industry standard that as a business, you must actually comply with. The likes of compliance strategies to meet regulatory requirements in an hybrid work, has become very complicated. You realize that today, especially in the advent of AI, you will find out that the regulatory bodies as beginning to increase the regulatory requirement. The compliance requirement as beginning to be expanded because of a whole lot of things, data privacy, a whole lot of things that is coming with AI and different kind of new technology that is coming, on board today. And in most cases, you now realize that where this is now paired along with organizations working in hybrid environment, now the requirement to meet these various requirements will now become so much of complication. And that is why there is need for intentionality. We'll have the identity, and to do this, there is need for every businesses and organization to actually be able to identify relevant regulations per your sector. Every sector, there are different kind of regulatory requirement that is actually applicable to your environment. And the funniest thing is that there is no excuse for ignorance. If for any reason your business or organization fall victim of any of these regulations, and because you were not even aware, nobody will actually hear you or make any reasons for or excuses for such. So imagine one of those is the fact that you are meant to actually be able to file your company data report, at a particular day of the year, and where you have any incident, you are meant to report, and so many other things that inability to do all of this can actually make the CISO of the organization end up in the jail for 6 months. So these are some of the regulations that have very stringent penalties that a lot of organizations are not so aware of. Then again, we'll talk about the hardback, implementation of hardback. Gone are those days, and when you even look at what Microsoft is doing with Windows 11 and including Windows Server, you realize that the main administrator's account in most cases now has been reduced. In fact, it is advisable that the main administrator, which is more or less the almighty of the systems or on your network, should actually be disabled. One of the reasons is that it is easily targetable. Everybody knows administrator's account is actually the one that have the optimum or the maximum power, privilege in any environment. So when the crook is trying to attack an environment, it is typically one of the accounts they can actually target. So, and that is why all of those things you are meant to actually be able to make use of technologies or systems that can actually reduce users' privilege, so that you don't have a user that have almighty account or almighty privilege in your environment. Audit and log mechanism, you are meant to have a way to continuously monitor your users' activities and maintain their audit trace. All of these are things that can actually put you ahead of the group. And moving on again, we'll have the data classification and encryption. You are meant to have encryption mechanism in place that is able to classify your various type of data that you have in the business, your organization, and access to all of these things are adequately sanctioned before it's granted. Then secure collaboration tools and that is why, for instance, we have endpoint speaking to the firewall, speaking to your email security, speaking to your access point or access control that you may have in the environment. All of these things are meant to actually be able to collaborate. So where such is actually possible, you realize that you are able to actually stay ahead of the group. Now, moving on, you then talk about compliance. That how can we then, is it a must for us to actually become compliance? Then I will tell you whether to become a compliance or not is no longer negotiable. It is actually a must. Every organization today must actually be compliant with their various applicable regulations based on the sectors that they operate from. And the importance of meeting this in an hybrid work environment can never also be overemphasized, because the consequences of not meeting those requirements or regulations can actually can be more than the cost of the existence of your organization. And that is where today we are introducing to you, few of those cogent mechanism or system that you can actually use to be able to stay ahead of the curve. One of it is ZTNE that one of my colleagues is going to be talking about. And the second one is the compliance that will also take us in a deep dive on how we can actually become compliant. Therefore, for every organizations that want to stay ahead of the curve, that are ready to actually being able to stand the test of time, hybrid work is here to stay. You need to know that. There's no how you can actually shy away from it. And organizations that fail to adapt can actually face increased risk and potential regulatory penalties. However, by implementing strong security policies, leveraging the right technologies, and promoting security awareness, businesses can actually thrive in the hybrid era without compromising security and compliance. And on that note, we're going to be taking us into this segment where zero trust is going to be demystified for us, as well as how compliance can also help the continuous existence of our business. As I introduce to you my colleague, Semio Arugundadi.
Thank you, Victor, for that insightful presentation. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. So now, building on what was shared, let's dive into the security model, where we're going to learn a strategy for hybrid work environment. So we're going to learn zero trust security domains. What are the components or domains that the organization needs to put in place to have a robust zero trust architecture? Then we will also look at ZTNA in a hybrid work environment, as well as the key principles of ZTNA and how ZTNA is also in compliance and regulatory alignment. So these are the things we are going to, unfold in this segment. Now, starting with the security hybrid work, it actually means that, what are the things for your hybrid environment you need to put in place? Oh, apologies, I don't have, okay, so what are the things, hybrid environment that you need to put in place, right? So you're talking about security strategy for hybrid work, talking about implement zero trust, as well as adopting your MFE. For your environment, for the hybrid work environment, is that you should implement zero trust. So which means that don't trust anything by default, even if it's inside your network, right? You shouldn't trust this by default. Ensure that every user in your network device must be verified before accessing company resources, right? Then, aside from that, also try to adopt MFE. Okay, so having an MFE in place requires another level of security whereby you have a password is one-time code before granting access. So you just imagine, you log into your bank account and instead of you just entering your password, there's still additional, one-time PIN that you need to enter. So recently, I was trying to make a transfer on the particular mobile bank app. I think it's a huge transfer. So aside from that, for my password, so there's this additional request that, a PIN that came through my phone or my email to provide additional, just to verify, to be sure that, okay, to be verified, to be sure if I'm actually the one authorizing that kind of transfer, because I think that is a new method or new level of security adopted by that bank app for me. Okay, so can we go back to the slide? All right, so security remote access also included. So you need to ensure that you have your remote access in place for a custom for your environment to have employees that work remotely. Who work remotely, please. You also need to ensure that you secure that kind of a connection either through ZTNA or VPN. For your users that as well have mobile devices, because they work with a company devices, and the company resources or data are actually in these devices as well. I'm talking about their laptop, mobile phones as well. So for your users' activities, detect cyber threat, you need to deploy an endpoint solution. So this also helps you to have ensure that your device are protected. That is device the staffs are using to access companies' data. Then for an hybrid environment where you have a cloud resources, you need to enhance your cloud resources whereby protect data that are stored in the cloud. I'm talking about data like Microsoft 365, Google Drive, and AWS. So by using encryption access control, and different monitoring tools to ensure that you enhance cloud securities. Not just okay, I have a cloud resources and you leave it there because you believe that by default cloud is secure. No, you also need to enhance the cloud security to secure your data stored in the cloud services, right? Cloud environments. Conduct a regular security audit for your staff um, because regularly reviewing and testing their security to find weakness before hackers do, it also helps. So imagine your company hires a cybersecurity expert from Reliance, for instance, to come and simulate kind of attack, penetration testing on their system. So if they find any vulnerabilities, the company fix them before a real hackers get into the environment and use those vulnerability as an exploit to exploit them. So it's just like you testing the fire alarm to ensure that it works before a natural fire incident, occur. So conduct a regular security audit and also train your employees about cybersecurity, right? Train your employees about cybersecurities, educate them on how to recognize phishing, phish emails, as well as um, any securities policies, so that they won't just when they spot any kind of fake emails, they can easily identify it, and as well to avoid clicking on any on suspicious links on their suspicious link when they come across any kind of such links as well. So moving on, we'll be looking at the domain uh, that comprises of zero trust. And when we're talking about domain, we're talking about the key components, right, that comprises of zero trust. So the domain has different components, or what I say tools, that comprises the zero trust architecture. When we're talking about the domain, we are talking about the endpoint, where that protect your laptop, your organizational laptop, mobile phone, and servers. So where you need to ensure that you have EDR, patch management, and data loss preventions in place, as well as your IoT securities for Internet of Things device that you also need to use against cyber threats. And talking about device authentication for every device on your network that needs to be authenticated, also needs to have a proper network segmentation, ensure that your firmware are secure, updated, and you have an encryption for IoT data, right? So aside from that, you also need to look at your API securities, because you need to ensure that you have a secure, interaction between your applications. We know some of us has a connection to the third-party partners where you have your API connections to those things. So you need to ensure you have an API gateway that also has an encryption input validation. So you need to implement this, secure your development practice, as well as your API keys. Very important for you to also consider when you're looking at robust zero trust architecture. So these are the things that you need to put in place. Then your network security, which is very, very important, talking about the perimeter. So this means that trigger your network traffic and prevent unauthorized access into your environment. So this means that so what you need to do here is ensure that your intrusion prevention is properly implemented. You have your network access control, NAC solutions, then your VPN, firewall, and network segmentations are also in place. So the data security, which also helps you to protect sensitive data across all your environments. You can have your different platform where you have all your environments, as well as what's it called? Talking about encryption, data masking, and access control. You also need to have a backup and recovery in place. Then, as I mentioned earlier, that your cloud securities, ensure that there's a secure operation. Talking about CASB. So the CASB ensure that you have a cloud access security brokers, identity access, management, security posture, different, compliance and monitoring of the cloud security audits are also in place. So please, on your screen, you see a pool. Please do well to quickly help us, respond to these pool questions. we just want to have an idea, want to understand how does the organization currently secure your remote employees. We know we have a staff, and organization today have actually adopted, people hybrid system whereby you have some staff that work from some Zoom office, or some do 3 times or 2 times in a week. To know what are the securities, or how does your organization currently secure remote employees? Are they VPN in place? Do you have any kind of MFA? We don't like to have an idea. So thank you for your response to that pool. Now we'll be looking at, let's quickly look at understanding ZCA in hybrid work environment. You have an hybrid work environment, and you are looking at how do you ZCNA comes to play, or how do ZCNA helps in an hybrid work system. So traditional VPN are no longer enough. So if you are still using VPN today and you think your environment is secure, no, you are wrong. It's not enough. I'm not saying it's not protected. Yes, to some levels, you have your VPN, it's still protected to some level, but once see VPN, like you having even your keys to someone to access your environment, right? And once they enter, they can move freely inside. So see your VPN as like that kind of hacker that have gained access into your environment. They can explore everything within your environment. But ZCNA is different, because by default, ZCNA never assume trust. It verifies every request before it grants you access to specific application data. And it also helps you reduce attack surface by verifying every request before granting access. So how does ZCNA helps in these regards? So for every connection, request check for identity, right? And device, it also helps you to get access to what you absolutely need. Even if I can steal your password, they won't get access into your environment, as well as give you secure remote access on site. Now we need to quickly look at the key principles. Talking about the key principles of ZCNA. Like I said, ZCNA never trust by default. Either you are an insider or external. You are a guest within the network. If you are the MD, the CEO, you never trust by default, because you believe that once you are trusted, which means you can move freely within the network. So by default, ZCNA never trust. It's always verify. So it requires continuous verification every time a user or device try to connect into the access the data. So this means that even if the hacker steal your password, for example, username and password, ZCNA still has some levels of security in place that will still check before the person can finally gain access into your environment. It also helps you in less privileged, where only it only give you access to like a systems and have data, nothing more. So if an employee, for example, does not need access to financial record, why would they have access to even see it? It won't even allow you to see it, not to talk of you gaining access to see, to those records. So that's how ZTNAs work. So it helps you to less privilege, and it also helps in micro segmentation in a way that it divides your network into a smaller and isolated section. So this helps you to ensure that attackers cannot even move freely. If they have access to segment A, they can't move to segment B, segment C, because it prevents that kind of a lateral movement. So such will not even happen. Now, moving on, we're going to look at how ZTNA helps when it comes to compliance and regulatory alignment. In today's business, we agree with that. Business must follow strict data protection, law and security standard to avoid any kind of fines like legal issues, reputational damage. And ZTNA also helps in company to stay compliant with all these regulations by enforcing strong security controls. And how does it help in this regard? So it support compliance like GDP, general data protection, like to protect customer data in the EU, and Nigeria also have their own data protection as well. So a global standard like ISO, National Institute of Standard and Technologies, and other regulation like IPA. So for healthcare and PCI DSS, so it also helps in these regards as well in this segment and for payment data. So ZTNA helps to meet this standard by implementing authentication, data encryption, and continuous monitoring. So it also helps to enforce, access control policy for data. Aside from that, it helps in provide audit log and company compliance reporting. So 30NA has really helped when it comes to all these regulatory compliance. Now, to have a further understanding and regulatory landscape, I'll be introducing, calling my colleague Zibo, who is going to share more insight as regards to best practice and compliance in greater depth.
Awesome. Thank you, Sami, for that introduction. And let me just jump right in, right? So we have to understand the regulatory landscape that all organizations currently work in, right? So first things first, we have to talk about the Nigeria Data Protection Act and the Data Protection Regulation, which had a huge impact in the way we do business, especially in Nigeria. And it was all about how we now deal with personal data and what steps we should take to protect it. So it was really, really impactful and changed the way we do work, right? And then there's also the GDPR, which is the European Union's own version of the NDPR, and it has a lot of similarities and it's more encompassing. So for any organization that's doing business with European citizens or in Europe, they have to abide by this. And then we also have to talk about the payment card industry data security standard, which isn't really a legal regulation, but more of a standard that all organizations who conduct payment using our cards, debit and credit and all of that, they have to abide by it to say that we at least provide this minimum amount of protection, right? And last but not least, we have to discuss the Nigeria Health Act, which really speaks to and dictates how all the healthcare practitioners and service providers in Nigeria should go about their business. So these are just some of the regulations that we're currently operating and we have to keep top of mind. Now, moving on, we are going to talk about some of the legal obligations and the ramifications of non-compliance with these regulations that I just mentioned. So with the NDPR, you can actually be fined, right, up to 10 million naira or even 2% of global revenue. Now that is a lot of money. And later on, we'll talk about some of the entities that unfortunately didn't take their compliance seriously, right? And some of the other penalties that we have to deal with include the loss of customers. This is due to customer trust being degraded. People don't want to do business with an entity that has proven time and again that it does not respect them nor care about their rights and data, right? And that also means that you open yourself up to legal consequences because if you mess up, you can be sued, right? There's always that opportunity for any individual who has been hurt by your negligence to come back and sue. And then obviously we also have to talk about the reputational damage. You cannot allow yourself to actually be caught up with your pants down, right? So if you are in that unfortunate scenario, you lose the faith, right, of your customers as well as the faith of your business partners. And now we'll be talking about how you can actually face some of the hybrid work challenges that are out there. Now, these challenges are really not only for hybrid and remote work, right? You can also face some of them when you're in the office. So they primarily affect remote and hybrid workers. So the first one we have to talk about is data security and access control, which is really huge because you don't have that level of control over, the physical environment as you do in the office when you're a remote worker, right? And that means that when it comes to securing your data and ensuring that only specific individuals can have access to it, it's a lot harder because at the end of the day, you don't have those network edge firewalls and all of those fancy technologies, right? And as I mentioned about physical security, at the office, you have your boundary walls, you have your physical security officers there, you even have biometric access control, right? To ensure that certain people only have access to those physical locations. But unfortunately, the same cannot be said for employees when they're in a remote work scenario. And that means that laptops can be easily stolen and the data on them compromised easily. And we also have to talk about employee monitoring and privacy, which in my opinion is actually the hardest challenge amongst these because when you're at the office, it's pretty easy for you to monitor your employees and ensure that they're following protocol and ensure that they're performing well, right? But when you're carrying out remote work and hybrid work, you have to walk a fine line between ensuring that you are appropriately and adequately monitoring and also respecting their privacy. So at times, organizations can overstep or not do enough. And we also have to talk about accountability and governance. How do you keep employees working remotely accountable for their actions, not delivering results, and ensuring that they work in the proper way that they're supposed to work? So these are just some of the challenges that we can face with. And moving on, we'll be talking about some of the required policies that can actually assist you in overcoming those challenges. So first and foremost, we have to talk about a privacy policy, which is very key because data protection regulations are popping up everywhere, right? And that means you have to take them very, very seriously. Now, in that regard, the privacy policy will set the tone for how the organization actually goes about and respects, right, the data of the individuals and customers who do business with it. So it's very, very important. And we also have to talk about the cybersecurity risk management policy, which encompasses a lot of things, actually. You have to talk about your vulnerability management, your penetration testing, and all those types of policies, right, to ensure that the security of the organization overall is very, very secure and that you ensure that any weaknesses are plugged. And we also have to talk about device and network security, because at the end of the day, your employees are always working on their local machines, right? So you need to ensure that those are very, very secure and ensure that the network that they're connecting to is also secure, even if it is outside of your purview, right, of your physical premises. And we also have to talk about incident response, very, very important, because at the end of the day, it's not if something will happen, it's when, right? Especially in the digital age that we're living in. And moving on, we'll be talking about some of the security obligations that organizations will face, right? So first and foremost, as part of an organization that doesn't even engage in hybrid work, right? And others that do engage in hybrid work, these security obligations are really all encompassing. You have to ensure that your devices are secure, your network is secure, that you do actually have instant response planning and recovery. And this actually encompasses your business continuity and disaster recovery, because some legislation actually mandates that your services should still be available. Individuals should still be able to access their data. Now, if you unfortunately did not put in the requisite protections and measures in place to ensure that even if you're under attack, your services are still available, then you find yourself liable as well, right? And we also have to talk about employee training and awareness, which is key, very, very key, because at the end of the day, your employees are the ones who will be ensuring that your mandate, right, is delivered and that the business and organization operates efficiently and effectively and achieves its goals. And now there'll be a poll question dropping. Please do attempt it, and we'd really like to hear your feedback from that. And then next, we'll be talking about how you can actually improve on compliance, which is a very, very nice thing, actually, because at the end of the day, we all know that we should be compliant, but it's such a higher level concept. We'd really like some step-by-step procedure that we can take to actually improve it. So the first one we'll be talking about is data governance, which is very, very important, because at the end of the day, you cannot protect what you do not know you have. And that's why we actually have to take data mapping and data inventorying very seriously. You need to know where your data resides, who has access to it, right? And this is something that is actually required under certain data protection regulations, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't know where your data resides, how can you prove that you're compliant, especially with data that should only remain within the borders of the country? And we also have to talk about access management. So this is very, very key, because at the end of the day, you need to ensure that only individuals who require access to certain assets to carry out the mandate should have it. And access management is very, very important. And some individuals or some organizations implement that by utilizing role-based access control, and some implement privileged access management to ensure that you don't have privilege creep in your environment, whereby a particular employee needs to have access to something that is of a higher access than the one they have, and they temporarily need it, right? And then you give it to them, but then they do it, they do the task with it, and then they complete it, but still retain that access. So privileged access management, very, very important. And we also have to talk about monitoring and auditing. because at the end of the day, people will do what people do, and you need to ensure that you have a way to track what everyone is doing and understand why they're doing it and be able to highlight any bad things that anyone could be doing. And that also leads us to the audit aspect. I know a lot of people hate audit season, but at the end of the day, auditors assist you with ensuring that you identify specific weaknesses in your current processes and remedy them. Right. And we also have to talk about policy development and enforcement, which is very, very important because at the end of the day, rules are rules, right? And they're not alive, and people are people. So at the end of the day, you need to ensure that you can have all these fancy policies and the likes, but if you don't fully enforce them, there is no point. So this is very, very important. And probably the cherry on top. And next, we have to talk about some organizations which unfortunately did not take their compliance seriously. So the first one we'll be discussing is a very big social media juggernaut, which back in 2021 was actually fined about $200 million for unfortunately not giving enough protection to users' personal data. So 500 million records are actually compromised and available on the darknet. Imagine. And for that blunder, they were actually fined $200 million. And this was actually one of the first huge fines we saw in the data protection field. And bringing it closer to home, we have to talk about an event that occurred in South Africa, also in 2021, where a government department of South Africa, right? And it's just kind of funny because it's like the government finding the government. But it just shows you that at the end of the day, no one, right? No one is immune to the law. So that particular government department was actually very, very negligent in its IT field. And what happened was that at the end of the day, they did not renew the endpoint protection solutions. They did not renew the intrusion detection systems and so on. All those important technologies, right? So they're really leaving themselves open to threat actors. And unfortunately, a threat actor being a threat actor, they sniffed out the weakness and took it in, right? And then we also have to talk about in back in Nigeria, the NDPC actually fined a financial institution 500 million naira for illegally collecting personal data. So these are just some of the things that can actually occur, right? And moving on, we'll also now talk about how zero trust actually benefits data protection, especially when you're working in a hybrid environment. So zero trust aligns itself beautifully with the core principles of data protection, including data minimization and purpose limitation, because of the microsegmentation that is inherent to zero trust. An individual will only have access to only a certain part of the network or a specific application and nothing else, unlike with traditional VPN, right? And we also have to talk about the data security aspect of it, in that zero trust inherently is a secure solution because it's all about never inherently trusting any connection or any device or any person, and always verifying and ensuring that this particular individual should have access. And this is helped by continuous authentication and authorization. And zero trust also assists with your compliance because of the way in which it has this detailed audit aspect, right? Ensuring that it actually logs all the connections, be they failed or successful ones. It ensures that you always have something to go back to and say, okay, this individual did this, and that. And it's also very, very important in ensuring that if you do actually happen upon being a victim of a breach, the blast radius, right, of that particular breach is small due to that micro-segmentation that is inherent to zero trust. And with that, I thank you so much for giving me your time, and let me hand it back to our anchor, Kenny. Over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much to our speakers, Zibo, Victor, and Samuel. I believe they have done a very excellent job trying to discuss some of these security hybrid work challenges, the evolving threat landscape, and really the role of zero trust in strengthening the security and compliance, because really that is why, that is what we've come to learn. And so I would push us, if you have questions, please drop your questions in the chat room. This is, we are the Q&A segment, and would like to hear from you, whatever questions it is you have. But as you are putting that out, I know we sent out some polls during when the speakers were speaking, so we'll just discuss a bit on it so that, it's more like added knowledge to all of us, right? So a poll question on what is the biggest security challenge your organization faces in a hybrid work model? We asked that question, and a good number of us on the call said that it was preventing phishing and cyber attacks, and managing employee awareness and training. So Semio, I don't know if there's something you want to say to that response, so that we can glean more insights, and the attendees today could learn more from those answers. Semio, over to you, please.
Right. Thank you, Kendi. Yeah, am I audible? Yes.
Yes, please. We can hear you. Go ahead.
So, looking at the poll, your question is, what is the biggest cybersecurity challenge the organization face in an hybrid work model? So, according to the response to this poll, we have 50% responded that preventing phishing cyber attacks. We have 37% said managing employees and training, while 12% mentioned that securing remote access. Now, so I'm going to respond to these, answers that we have here. That I've seen that preventing phishing and cyber attacks has been the biggest challenge for them, right? So for these employees who has a challenge with preventing phishing and cyber attacks, we need to first of all carry out robust assessments. What are the security tools they are using to combat with the phishing attacks today, and how did they implement it? There are two things we need to understand. There's different you having a tools that will combat with your cyber security's challenges. For example, the phishing and cyber attacks. There is another things that require you. How do you implement it? So you subscribe for some tools, also cybersecurity tools or solutions. But how do you implement it? Does it actually meet the challenges that you are facing today? That's also important. So this also needs to be reviewed. The endpoint that you are using to combat with it. What kind of your emails, where are they located? Which email platform you are using, and how do you educate your staff? That is cybersecurity awareness training, because there are also the links where hackers gain access into the environment. How did they spot phishing emails? Just recently in environment where because someone reached out and received a particular email, everything looks totally legit. The document that was shared came through OneDrive, everything totally legit. At the end of the day, how will your staff needs to understand that they can let me forward this to the IT team because we wasn't sure of that content. Then how will the IT team, the administrator also notice or identify that these are phishing emails? This happened recently. And if you are not careful, you will fall a victim, because if you take that link of order to any site, it will tell you that it's likely clean. At the end of the day, when we carry out the further checks, we discover that it's just one of those phishing attacks where they want to steal, your data, your login information. So all these things needs to put in place, and as well as your remote access, which is your remote users. How did they connect. Like I said, VPN is not enough. Even if you have MFA along with your VPN, that doesn't give you robust, secure connection. You still need to ensure that you adopt the ZTNE approach. The reason is because the VPN will give you access to the entire network. The MFA can still be compromised today. We have a situation whereby MFA is still compromised. So having VPN, MFA is still not enough. But you having a ZTNE along with this will give you a total robust architecture within hybrid work environment, to secure your remote users working in an hybrid environment. So these are the things I will advise us to adopt or put in place. And Reliance can as well help in this situation. You can reach out to us to help you stay compliant and also meet all those requirements as well as securing your hybrid work environment. Thank you, Kenny. I believe I've been able to answer your question.
Okay. I think you have been able to, give more clarity to the poll answers that we have gotten. So we are moving on to the we are getting closer to the end of today's webinar. So like I said, speakers have done an excellent job. Really giving explaining all of about all of this is that just understanding the concept is really the beginning of this journey, as implementation really is where the real transformation happens for your organization. And Semi says something. So Reliance Infosystems, we are positioned to support you on this journey, right? Helping you to build that secure and compliant environment that you've always wanted to cater for your organization's needs. And we're also have the right expertise, and also you have the right guidance. Like I had mentioned, we have to further support you on that. We put together some exclusive offers. I'd mentioned them at the start of this event. So we are offering you a data protection compliance readiness checklist. This is so that we evaluate your organization's security and compliance posture. You would also receive guidance on the privacy and data governance policy development, just so that we ensure that your organization is meeting some of those regulatory standards that Zibo had mentioned. And beyond all of this, we're also providing a free cybersecurity awareness training. So why we're doing this is that we want to empower your workforce, against this evolving threat. What do they need to do? How do they need to react to threats when they come up? And finally, we'll be supporting you complimentary advisory session. So this is more like a one-on-one call with our and they'll be able to give you those tailored security strategies that is just for your organization. And to claim yours, all I want you to do is to simply complete the form that will be shared in the chat room to indicate your interest. So remember, I mentioned that terms and conditions apply, right? So all you have to note is that this offer is valid for the next 24 hours. So I'm begging you to please take advantage of it before time runs out. So as we conclude today's event, really we are hoping that you have gained those valuable insights that you need for your hybrid work. We've talked about hybrid work, we've talked about security, we've talked about compliance. So one thing I want you to remember is that cybersecurity is a continuous journey. It's not something that is one-off. It's not something you just implement and feel that, oh, the rest will sort out itself. It is a journey, and implementing the can make all of the big difference for your organization. Now, before you go, social media channels that will be displayed on the screen, and also that will be dropped in the chat room so that you can stay updated on future events, some of our future events, because I know you must have learned a lot, so you might be looking forward to other ones that we would be having, those industry insights and really many more from our deck. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, and we really look forward to supporting your organization's journey to better security and compliance. We look forward to you filling in that form. That's where we can gather your interest, and we do hope to engage you in the weeks following this event. So thank you everyone for your time. I hope you have a great day ahead. Bye for now.